Hi, welcome back to the Biblical Preaching Podcast. I got in before you there,
You
mate.
did, yeah.
All right, good to be back. And what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about feedback. Yeah. So, particularly, what should we be thinking about? Yeah, good feedback.
Good feedback.
Kind of,
Yeah.
What should we be looking for when we're hearing people preach, or involved in training and encouraging people preach? How do we give good feedback? Kind of what do we look for, and how do we do it? So we're trying to avoid, just kind of quickly as we introduce, we're trying to avoid bad feedback.
Can we talk about bad feedback for a minute, though?
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite subjects.
Go on, there's examples, I can feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think bad feedback is kind of when you mistake politeness for genuine input. Okay, so for example, if you think about it, they say that people, I mean, I love misquoting statistics, not when I preach, but just for fun in conversations like this. But, you can sort of look at the statistics of what do people fear the most, and public speaking is higher than death. Therefore, and this is where, you can get carried away with your fallacies, but therefore people would rather die than public speak. And I think actually, given the choice, most people probably would actually do public speaking rather than death.
Agreed.
But nonetheless, it's quite a major thing, right? So given the fact that people are scared to death of public speaking, the fact that you just stood up and spoke means that they didn't have to.
Mm.
And so what are they going to say to you afterwards other than, oh, thanks?
Yeah.
Right, they're going to say something polite.
Yeah.
But you don't want to camp out on that polite comment, especially, I'm kind of getting excited here, but especially if you're in one of those churches where after you preach, you then stand at the door and they've got to say something to you to leave. They're going to say something polite.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10.
Yeah. That was good today.
Thanks for that.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Good message.
Good message. Needed that.
Yeah. And all those things are fine, and I'm not being critical of them. What I'm saying is don't evaluate your ministry based on polite comments and say, well, I just had a whole load of people say that was good. It must have been good.
Yeah.
You don't actually know that.
Yeah. And even if you're involved in the privilege of giving feedback, don't camp there either. Like, don't just say, okay, my feedback to you is it was good. Like, have something helpful, constructive, and caring. And being constructive and caring is more than just saying that was good and you had good eye contact. Although that is actually quite an important thing. But if that's it.
Yeah, I tend to think that feedback received on the day is, generally speaking, going to be worth less than feedback you get later. Mm. Okay, so if someone comes to me and says, hey, last week you spoke about this and I've had this thought, or I've got a question, or were you saying this, or I've thought about it and I'd like to tell you something feedback-wise. Like anything that's kind of, there's a gap of time is probably worth more than what they said in the immediate aftermath. So, in the immediate aftermath of preaching, someone might say, that was the best thing I ever heard. Don't get carried away. They're just being exuberant. Or, that was the worst thing I ever heard.
Yeah.
Like, don't resign from your ministry. They might be having an emotional day. But if someone comes to you later and says, genuinely, your preaching is awful, that probably means more than hearing it 2 minutes after you finish preaching. So I think, when we're talking about feedback, we're not talking about polite comments or rude comments over a handshake. We're talking about thought through, maybe delayed by time, maybe you've requested it, and then it's more meaningful.
And I think particularly if you've been asked for it, if you've requested it, request it or deliver it with that delay that you're saying. So I think if someone asks me to give feedback on preaching or Bible study leading, whatever it is, my feedback in the moment will be very positive.
Yeah.
But then later on, it's like, this was really, really good. That was really, really good. Thank you so, so much. And then we'll meet later in the week or a bit later on, and that's when these categories of feedback that we're going to think about, that's when the sort of the real feedback.
Yeah.
And it'll still, I want to be encouraging, but it like, yeah, you're right. Just the real feedback, take it out of the moment.
It's very hard to hear it in the moment, not just because of pride, but just because of weariness.
Yeah.
You could feel really spent after you've preached, and you might be feeling like, I've just gone through a war zone. It's been a spiritual battle. I'm disappointed with how it's gone. So and so is falling asleep. Like, there's all sorts of swirling emotions, and that's not the time for someone to come up and say, I've got concerns about your eye contact and about your content, and actually your third point was actually heretical, and like those kind of things are very hard to hear in that moment. But on Thursday morning, they'll probably be, as long as you deliver them well, carefully, the person will be much more open to it. So it's not a negative that you want to share it later. It's just reality.
So when you're thinking of feedback,
Yeah.
you I think you have in mind sort of a quadrant, four elements of preaching, message, delivery, and preparation and the delivery. And so you sort of have you have a, like, would you literally have that on paper, like kind of draw like a cross and have 4 boxes
If
on
I'm
paper,
giving
or at least
feedback,
in mind you would?
Yeah. If I'm giving feedback, if I'm evaluating, if I'm if teaching a class and students are preaching, I just take a piece of paper and draw the cross, the plus sign that creates the quadrant, and then I just put the initials for the 4 things. I don't know why, because I know what each quadrant is. So I could just leave them blank and I know what I'm putting in each one.
Yeah.
But I do find it helpful to have that set of kind of categories for thoughts, because in a sense, I'm evaluating based on what I would want to give. So if I was preaching, what do I want to be true of my preaching? I want it to be biblical, I want it to be clear, I want it to be engaging, and I want it to be relevant. And those are the 4 quadrants. And so because that's what I'm aiming for when I preach, that's what I'm aiming for in others when I teach them, therefore I'm evaluating for what I want them to do. Biblical, clear, engaging, relevant.
Is that an order? Biblical is the first thing on purpose.
Yes.
Are the other 3
I think so.
in order as well, do you think?
Yeah, because I'm thinking biblical because it's the true meaning of the text. I want the text to be preached. And then clear and engaging, that is effectively communicated by the preacher. And then relevant, with relevance to the listener. So if you put that kind of sentence together, it's the true meaning of the text effectively communicated by the preacher with relevance to the listener. So it's going from text to listener through the preacher. So that's the order.
That's really fundamental to our definition of what preaching is. Bible is boss, the person that is proclaiming and delivering the message to people who are listening. That's, again, this is all, like, it's a purposeful, it's a purposeful thing.
It's not random.
No, exactly. So do we want to sort of go through each of those 4 elements, like briefly, but kind of what is within each of those elements? So to be biblical, what is it that we're trying to do, but also what kind of how are you listening out for preachers being biblical? So it's going to be something to do with the big idea being close to the text, I would imagine.
Yeah, and the message being close to the text.
Right.
Is the message that I'm hearing the message of the passage, or is the passage just being used as a springboard? So, someone can read a passage, they can refer to a passage, but not actually preach the passage.
And they can even be biblical in what they're saying, in the sense of what they're saying is true because it's in the Bible, but it's not in that passage of the Bible.
Exactly.
In an explicit way.
Or they can be jumping all over the Bible, which is another way to be biblical. But the actual passage they claim to preach, they really haven't preached it.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for not just, is this kind of theologically faithful truth? Obviously that's important. If there's heresy, I want to flag it. But is it the message of this text? You read a passage to me. I've got my Bible open to that passage. I'm expecting you to preach that passage. So does your message follow that passage? Does it explain the passage? Is the explanation actually what the text means? And then is the main idea, the sort of summary of the whole, is that the summary of that passage?
Even the structure or the outline of the message can and probably should reflect the structure and the outline of the passage too. That's often a clue as to how we've understood, or if we've understood the passage and how we're communicating.
Right, because you can read a passage and then you can state theological truths based on words within the passage. But as I'm listening, I'm looking for, do I understand this passage better? And just telling me what a word means doesn't explain the passage. I want to know, why does he say that there?
Yeah,
What's
why?
the flow?
Yeah, that word that has been chosen by the author in that sentence, in that paragraph, in that story, or in that letter. In that. Yeah.
And how does it hold together?
Yeah.
There's a coherence to, if it's a true unit of thought, there's a unity of thought within it. And so you might say 3 or 4 different things that are all biblically true, theologically accurate, but they don't hold together. Therefore, you haven't preached that passage, because that passage is coherent. It's saying something. It's not saying lots of random things.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the being biblical, is faithful to the message of the meaning and the message of the text. And then we're thinking in that sort of definition of communicating effectively, and so being clear. So what do you think of being clear? So that would presumably include speaking clearly.
Yes.
In terms of delivery. So if you're a mumbler or speaking too fast or too slow, that comes out in,
Or too intellectual.
right.
Or, it just, the delivery does affect clarity.
Yeah. But what else are you thinking?
But also content.
Yeah.
Is the content clear? So if you've got a message that has a clear main idea, good. Does it have a clear structure? Good. Does that structure clearly connect to the text? Good. There's elements to clarity. Do the points relate to each other clearly? Is it easy to follow your transitions? Do I know where I am in the text? Do I know where I am in the message as I'm listening to you? And so clarity is not just, is there an outline? Or is there a big idea? Or is your voice audible? It's all of it,
And that's related to, so it's kind of the other part of that is the preaching of the message, is that engaging. That's another element in it. So it's not just, if something is biblical and clear, therefore it's engaging.
No.
Not necessarily at all. But the engaging, that, like I said, that also is a vocal thing.
Yes.
So the speed or pace, pitch, kind of the how you talk affects engaging or engagement. There's the eye contact, which we kind of jokingly said, but actually that's important. If there is no eye contact, that's unengaging. And then if you can have too much eye contact, if you're staring at someone,
you can
that's
have
kind
too
of odd,
much, but it's not an engaging thing. It becomes intimidating or threatening.
So, with engaging, we're thinking, I think, in terms of, it's the connection of the message to the person through me.
The key word, I think, for engaging is energy.
Okay.
Is there energy in the delivery and in the content? So the reason I added engaging, because I've seen other, I was going to say quadrants, they wouldn't be quadrants. I've seen other
Triangles?
trifectas of preaching or something. Triangles that are kind of saying, well, it's got to be biblical, clear, and relevant. Okay, so you've got the biblical content, you've got the clarity of communication, and you've got the relevance to the listeners. And I'm like, yeah, but you can do all of those things and still be dull. You can be biblical but dull, clear but dull, relevant but dull. There's nothing to say. There's no benefit to being dull, and so we've got to put in that fourth one. And so engaging is about having some energy within it. Now that doesn't mean being hyper and impossible to follow because you're just putting in pure energy. I'm not just saying add sugar to your preaching. I'm saying if you care about what you're saying, if what you're saying is life-changing, you can communicate it in a way that engages your listeners. And I think a lot of people can be quite dull in presentation of material, but get them talking about their new grandchild and they're suddenly very engaging. Or get them talking about their fiance and they're suddenly engaged, and therefore, yeah, that's ironic, engaged and engaging. And so it's that sense of having energy, enthusiasm, being contagious, and that comes through in the mechanism of eye contact, big, sort of appropriate sized gestures, movement, energy, and voice, vocal energy, variation. It comes through in those things, but you don't just fix those things to make it engaging. It's actually got to be alive.
Yeah, and the tone as well can be engaging or unengaging, disengaging. So if you're unnecessarily flippant,
Yep.
in a passage that's really not that tone.
You can be dull, you can be flippant, you can be shouty.
Yeah.
That can be off-putting.
Yeah.
So someone who's very passionate about what they're saying and very enthusiastic can turn me off completely, especially because I'm an introvert. But it can really turn me off from what they're saying if what they're doing is kind of too in your face, too abrupt, too strong, too forceful, and so, yeah, tone is a part of that. And I think it's potentially the engaging quadrant here is it's the place where we can sort of drop the ball if we're not careful, or we just don't think of it. And so you end up with sort of okay preaching, but I think engaging makes it preaching that grips people.
Because particularly, I guess, in our circles, we want to get the Bible right, and we want to be clear on the Bible message, and that's obviously true and a good thing.
Yeah.
But we focus so much on that then the engaging and the delivery could just get like I really struggle, I think, with the pace and pitch of what I say, because I want to be sort of so deliberate and clear in what I'm saying. I can be very one-paced, deliberate, and you need I think you need parts of preaching that is like that. But actually, if it's all really fast or all really slow, it's very unengaging. And so that would be an example of before I preach, to say to you or to someone else, look, I'm going to work really hard on my pace.
Yeah.
Can you note if that comes out or not, or that you can, because I know this quadrant. Like, I want to particularly work on one or two elements of it, and it tends to be in this engaging one, like you said, because that's the one that you kind of forget, because I'm delivering something and I'm just thinking, just say it right.
Yeah, and I think sometimes what can happen is you're thinking of it, you're conscious of it in your introduction, and so you start with energy, but then as you're kind of working through after point 1 into point 2, and there's still point 3 and you're watching the clock, you can get distracted. I'm not saying you, but in general.
That is true of me too.
You can get distracted from the energy piece.
Yes.
And you can kind of end up being a bit monotonous or just lose momentum.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if I could inject sugar, if we need a Red Bull in this sermon, it's right about now. Yeah. That lift at that point could really help the listeners.
Yeah. And that feeds into being relevant. So that's the fourth part of this. Is relevant is more than just having illustrations. Same as engaging is more than just having illustrations, but actually what you're doing with your illustrations provides relevance.
But even down to the wording of how you phrase things, the wording of your points or the wording that you use can be engaging, or it can be technical and dull, right? And in the same way, your wording can be relevant, or your wording can sound like you're talking to the 1930s. Yeah. Just so the choice of vocabulary. I remember hearing a world-leading theologian, I won't name him, he's with the Lord now, it doesn't matter, but I remember hearing him speak in a Bible college and seminary setting where the majority of the people were young, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and he came across like a sort of eccentric professor. And actually his content was phenomenal. And those lectures I've got on my shelf as a book, they were so good, they published it. But the 18, 19-year-olds could not connect with him because he just seemed so irrelevant. It was like a sort of wild, mad professor coming out with stuff they didn't understand. And actually what he was saying was awesome, but his wording didn't connect.
Yeah.
You know, and so relevance is kind of in the big stuff. Does this message land? Is it relevant to your life? This isn't just a historic lecture that you're giving. This is about people that are sat in front of you and their lives and their experience. And so it kind of, you know, you can look at it at the level of the main idea, the main points, the applications. All of that needs to be relevant. Illustrations, much better to be relevant than to be talking about the Napoleonic Wars to make a point. But even down to the wording used, if you just have a vocabulary or even a vocal tone that feels disconnected or distant or weird or off, people can kind of struggle to feel like this is for them. You know, so you can have content that on paper is brilliantly relevant, but if the person delivering it seems like they've stepped out of the Victorian age, people won't feel the relevance of it. So it's both, again, it's both content and delivery. It's the big stuff, but it's also the little details, the mannerisms, the choice of words. All of it is affecting actually all four of the quadrants.
Yeah, right. So you biblical, clear, engaging, relevant. We need to have those things in mind in our study,
yeah,
as we're preparing, and particularly in our delivery as well. We're trying to have those things in mind as we're preaching. But then when we're listening to preaching, particularly if we have that relationship where we can and have been given permission to give feedback to people in our church or wherever we're serving, that quadrant is going to stand really well. And yeah, take feedback, give feedback.
If someone asks me, hey, I'm preaching, would you mind giving me some feedback? I will automatically look for all four, but I'll also say to them, is there something in particular? You know, because requested feedback is so helpful. So if I'm the preacher and I say to you, Mike, I'm preaching, give me feedback, that's actually quite a burden. You know, it's like, whoa, I've got to think about all these different things. But if I say, no, actually, what I'm really trying to work on is eye contact or pause. That's a weakness for me. All right, so I don't pause enough, and I'm going to try to consciously pause at key moments. Can you watch for those and tell me, did I make the right choice? Were they the right length? Just tell me. The more specific I am in what I ask for, the more specific you'll be in your feedback. You know, but there's also a place for saying, I'm open to whatever.
Everything, yeah, and perhaps particularly if people are near the beginning of this preaching journey, they're not going to know specific things. Maybe you'll need to give them specific, you know. So you know, you have this quadrant, but then say, but next time, I find this helpful in my experience, but in giving and receiving feedback is, you know, this is the feedback, you know, good, bad, whatever. Next time, here are two things, three, maybe not more than three, but just one, two, or three things. Next time you preach, please preach again.
Yeah.
Next time, think about whatever, you know, and actually give them something specific, because they might not realize or might not know specific things. So it's just a privilege over everything. It's a privilege to be involved in someone's walk with Jesus and ministry journey. It's a privilege to be invited in to help them to grow. Really important part of it.
You could also, I think, give yourself feedback in the sense that after working on the message and your outline or whatever, you know, your notes are prepared, kind of step back from it and look at it and say, okay, am I biblically strong here? Like, is this is anyone going to be sat there thinking, but you haven't explained the passage? You know, does this work? And is this clear? Does this make sense? Like, can I look at this outline and say, yes, that's a clear one? Or am I looking at it saying, ooh, that second point is really a bit fuzzy? Because if you can spot it, fix it. Yeah. Because it's definitely going to come across fuzzier still. Same, you know, is this engaging? Am I excited by this? And is this relevant? Is this touching down in contemporary life? And is all of it doing that, or just my last 3 minutes?
To be able to self-review, self-feedback is a gift as well.
And then after you've preached, if you can watch a recording,
Yeah.
watch a video or listen to yourself, ask the same questions again.
Yeah.
If someone else was evaluating this, what might they say?
Yeah.
Because actually you can spot things in yourself. That's not exclusive. Like, that's not all you should do. By all means, ask for feedback from others. But sometimes what you spot will be more useful than the feedback you receive. Some people don't really want to give feedback. So you've got to find the right people. Some people will just say, oh, it was really good. Yeah, but what could I improve? Nothing really. It's like, well, that's really encouraging, but you haven't helped me at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can evaluate yourself, and if you find that people are just giving vague feedback, find someone that will be a bit more specific and ask them a more specific question. So
we were thinking of where to finish this episode in terms of feedback, and had a couple of ideas, but you kind of landed on a couple of proverbs.
A couple of proverbs. Let's try these on for size. I'm not sure what we need to say about these, and they're not strictly speaking, obviously, about preaching, but Proverbs 12:1. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. Any comments on that, Mike?
Well, I mean, Proverbs are sort of just there to be thought about, isn't it? But yeah, just
say that.
I guess. I mean, and the other one you'll read, isn't it? Just the idea of just being open to.
That's right.
To correction. Yeah,
12:15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. What a blessing that is in preaching terms, to have people who listen, who care, who say, you know what, this would make it even better.
Yeah.
And to take that on board. The result would be even better preaching. Yeah. How's that not a win?
Like, to be a wise preacher is a lot more than just being clever and growing in cleverness in our preaching, but being wise, like it says in those Proverbs, is receive criticism, feedback in that sense.
Yeah.
And use that as an opportunity to, like you say, to grow. We can all be more of all of those four things. But if we do grow in all of those four things, that's where God goes, God works.
And perhaps just one final comment as well. You kind of triggered a thought there, that actually whatever you hear from other people, or even whatever you see in yourself, talk to God about it, because he is the one who's responsible in some way for your ministry. It's unto him that you're preaching. And so I think it's really important to take what you receive and to pray it through. And you may find, and it's probably not bad advice, that the more extreme stuff, extremely positive or extremely negative, is best handled at the throne of grace. If someone says that was just awful heresy, and they just, something's got into them and they're just attacking you, it's going to be really hard not to become bitter or hurt or bruised by it. But go to God and talk it through with him. And equally, if someone comes and tells you that's the best thing since Spurgeon, you're the greatest preacher on the planet, you are not able to handle that. A, it's total nonsense because you're not, but B, it just, for the human soul, it's just not super healthy to get ridiculous overstatements like that. And so bring that to God as well and say, Lord, they said this, and I'm glad they're encouraged, and I'm glad that message did something. I can't handle that feedback, so I'm just going to leave that with you.
Yeah.
So talk things through with God and say to him, I've heard this positive, I've heard this negative. Help me to change in the areas where I need to. I'm thinking maybe this area, but Lord, I'm submitting myself to you. I want your input. I want your help. This is for you. So yeah, keep God in the conversation.
Yeah. Let him give you his feedback, maybe.
Right.
Is a way of thinking about it. But there we are. There's perhaps more to say. Do get in touch with us. If you have any other thoughts about feedback, or if you have feedback for us, you can feel free to share. But yeah, we're grateful that you have been with us on this episode. We will hopefully be with you again on another one soon.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate every positive review, like, share, and comment. And thank you for praying for us. We hope you will join us again next time on the Biblical Preaching Podcast.